Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcast. You're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media. That's AMPIRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in. And don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. In a minute, I'll be joined by TCU co-offensive coordinator and offensive line coach, AJ Ricker, as I talk to him about Washington Commanders rookie, Brandon Coleman. Can he be a left tackle in the NFL? And of course, Ricker's going to be very high on his guy, but find out why he thinks he can be a left tackle in the NFL, what he learned about him while coaching him, why he moved him to guard last year, and why he moved him back. So all that's in there. Stay tuned for that in a minute. On Tuesday, we'll be out at the Commanders facility for the first OTA practice, open the media, so we'll get a chance to see all the new veterans. And we're going to get a chance to talk to a handful of players after practice, including guys like Frankie Louvu, I think Bobby Wagner, I think Zach Ertz, one or two of those, a couple of those new guys, and get us, and talk to some of the holdovers like John Allen, just to get a sense of what they feel is going on here, et cetera. And just obviously there's a new energy out there. What does it mean, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Anyways, also on Wednesday, there's going to be a hearing in the Senate on the RFK bill. Sure, you've heard by now, Senator Daines from Montana making noise about going to try and block it if the team doesn't find some way to honor the Wetzel family. Of course, Blackie Wetzel designed the previous logo with the Indian on the Native American on the side of the helmet. They designed it, so he wants them to have a seat at the table and get something out of this, and just to honor the legacy of the logo, et cetera. So the name's not going to change back. The logo will never come back. So that's not going to be part of the equation. My best guess would be they find a way to honor him. They're going to have a museum at some point. I'm guessing they're going to be something with them in there, and maybe one or two other things. I don't think this would be a hard thing to get past. So I don't think this is going to be some big roadblock if they indeed want to go, or if they indeed can get back to RFK. But there's so many more steps remain ahead of this, and so I don't. Whatever, but suffice to say, for anybody still harboring any hope on it, the old name, this is not my decision. I'm just telling you, it's not coming back, nor is the logo. So the one thing that maybe they could return to that would maybe pacify some, maybe, is returning to the old look. Maybe, I don't know. You guys can determine that, because you're the fans. You know better than me about that. But again, name, logo, not coming back. You can be mad at me. It's just what I'm told from the people who have the power to do that. Anyways, so that's it. Enough with that. Let's get back to the football field and talk to AJ Ricker, TCU co-offensive coordinator, offensive line coach, about his former player, Brandon Coleman. Why does he think he can be a left tackle in the NFL? Well, AJ, first things first, what is Washington getting in Brandon Coleman?
Well, first of all, they're getting a good person, and a guy that hasn't played a lot of football. And I know that's probably not what they want to hear, but his best football is clearly ahead of him. He can play all five. He could have played center for us if we wanted him to. And really a guy that's going to find a way to outcompete people and find a way to get his job done, sometimes no matter what it takes.
When because he didn't start playing, I think it was his junior year of high school, correct?
Correct.
So and you had him for 3 years. So where did you see the progress, and where are some things you still say that's still an inexperienced thing?
Well, you look at in 22, the year we played for the national championship. Right. I mean, he was really, probably his junior year was better than his senior, because last year he got banged up a little with the high ankle sprain. But really, you saw him throughout the season from week one all the way through the national championship, really dominate the guys going against him. And he went against some really good football players, but you really saw him grow. And like I said, he doesn't have a million reps on his body, which is a good thing, but he's also what we would call green, and has still a lot of football left to play. And obviously reps count no matter what, but you really saw him transform, his junior year as we went on that long stretch there.
And what was the biggest transformation in him?
Just finishing blocks and really learning that, man, I'm pretty athletic. I can get to the spot a lot, and then doing something with it. I think you look at the year before, It was a lot of position blocking, just getting the job done, just getting in front of the guy. Where now, I mean, he's unbelievably strong and probably one of the most athletic guys I've been around and coached. Where now he's like, man, I'm a weapon. Like when I get to the point, I can definitely do some things. And watching him gain confidence more than anything was probably the biggest key.
Was there a stretch of games or moments where you saw like you start to finish blocks, you're like, oh, I can do this too? Did you see a stretch like that, or was it just kind of a gradual?
Yeah, you really K-State. We played them, I think, middle of the year, and I think they had the first rounder that year. I forget where he went, first round D end. But 90% of that game, he dominated that guy, and that was a big part of going to that game. You're gonna have to win your own battles, and he definitely did. And at times, almost made it look easy. And now we played K-State again in the Big 12 championship, and they kind of moved that D end around. But you really saw him that game because was a big key for us, to keep that guy out of the backfield. And he did an unbelievable job, and that's where I think from there you really saw his game progress.
He played basketball. So how do you see that helping him in football?
Well, you just look at his athleticism and look, I've heard this basketball. He's a good basketball player a million times, and you go watch him play, and they're dead average, right? Or you ask who's the best basketball player on the team, and they'll give you 15 different names. But you ask anybody on our team, it's unanimous. I mean, Brandon Coleman is the best basketball player, and you kind of see the athleticism and his feet are really good, and he understands angles and leverage, and probably a lot of that comes from basketball.
And one of the things too that you NFL guard or tackle. This team wants him as a tackle. How do you see him? I mean, you had Steve Avila last year, a really good guard. So how do you see Brandon in the NFL?
See, I think Brandon is so athletic. He can definitely, I think he'll be a great tackle, Yeah. Do you want the prototypical 6'6", 6'7" with the length? Yes. But Brandon's actually pretty long for his height. And I remember looking at his numbers from, I believe, the Senior Bowl. And, his reach was actually a reach of a 6'7" guy, and so he has the length and he has the athleticism. I put him inside just because, at 6'4.5", whatever he is, I figured that would suit him better. But when push came to shove last year, I had to put him back out of tackle because I trusted him.
And was there something with his skill set that maybe translates better to tackle?
Well, the biggest thing is you got to get to the fight, and we always say in pass pro, you got to beat the DN to the spot and then be ready to throw your hands. And a lot of guys can't even get to the spot anymore. And he is so quick and athletic, almost to a fault. And I know he'll be a lot better at it, but he gets to the spot so early that sometimes he's not patient enough. But watching those guys, because we watch a lot of NFL tape as well, some of the top NFL linemen, so they can watch and kind of learn. But his quickness off the ball, whether it's pass pro or run game, is what I think sets him apart.
And if you said that he could play all the line spots, there's got to be a high football IQ that goes with that. If you can play guard, tackle, and move around like that, and as you said, maybe even center. So how is he in that area?
He has a high football IQ. Now, there's also some, and I forget who I was telling this, but he'll make a mistake every once in a while that you're like, man, why would he make that mistake? And he just hasn't played a ton of football, where a guy that's played a ton of football probably wouldn't do that. You know what I mean? And he's still learning, but he'll be the first one to meet. He's eager to learn. He's a sponge. He just hasn't played a million reps, and really that's not his fault because he's doing the best to catch up. But he does have a football IQ. I mean, shoot, I moved him from left guard, to right tackle, to left tackle. I mean, he can play them all.
And what are some little things, like, again, as the inexperience, where are some of the little things that maybe show up with that, where it's like, hey, another year or two, these things are corrected?
I think a little bit just understanding angles and how fast maybe the second level linebackers will get to the spot and outside zone. And, even just like simple football rules, like, hey, in order to be on the line of scrimmage, the guard and tackle's helmet needs to break the bell to the center. Which, look, I get it, but most people that play a lot of football would know that. And really where you see it is he asks a ton of questions, which I love.
Hmm.
You know, I'd rather him ask a million questions than go out there and think he knows what he's doing and, you know, bust all over the place. Because he's such a high competitor that I tell people all the time, if he made a mistake in practice, by the time I get back in there, he's already watched the play. And most of the time I meet him coming into the locker room and he's like, look, this is what I did. This is why I messed that up. So it's highly important to him. And he'll learn whatever offense, whatever scheme, he'll learn it quick. Because like I said, he hardly ever busted. It was more in practice when we're kind of installing stuff and understanding, hey, outside zone, you got to go to where he's going to be, not where he's at. But I mean, he picked that stuff up pretty quickly. He's just, you know, at times will ask some, you know, questions that you think everybody knows, and clearly he doesn't.
but that's like you said, that's a good thing because he knows what he doesn't know.
Absolutely. And he's, you know, look, I know a lot of people that think they know stuff and they're scared to ask questions. He's not going to be one. He'd rather get it right than go out there and, you know, mess up, which, hey, I'd rather have that.
How else do you see that competitiveness show up? Is it little things, you know, with teammates, or how else do you see it show up?
Well, you see it just in conditioning, just when they go through winter conditioning, you know, he wants to be first. And that's just really a pride factor. And a lot of it is stuff that might not mean a lot to some other people, but every time he steps out there, I mean, it's important to him. And he almost knows that he's deficient with the lack of experience.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like he doesn't want that to show. So, hey, I'm going to be first and everything else, to where it doesn't look, I guess, as bad. But, you know, I don't want you to think, you know, he hardly busts. It's
Right.
just he is still a little bit raw in the game.
Sure. Well, that's
but it's a good thing. Man. He doesn't have a lot of bad tendencies, bad technique, and you know, you can shape him how you want him.
And that's the natural thing because again, he hasn't played a ton, which I think for, like you said, for these guys, that's part of the appeal for him too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And he's not, you know, it's not like he's been playing right tackle since high school, so you know, all of it's kind of new to him. But man, I never thought twice about moving him from left guard to right tackle. You know, oh, here we go. You know, there's going to be a million busts. He learns quick.
Is that by learning quick? Is it a natural just understanding? Is it just a ton of notes? What is it?
I think some of it's natural, and I think some of it's the eagerness that he wants to do it. But it's also his work ethic. You know what I mean? He's going to put in the extra time. He knows, you know, I always talk about for my guys, you know, slowing the game down. Well, how do you slow the game down? Well, be prepared. How do you play confident? Confidence in preparation. He took that to heart. And to me, that's what really helped him kind of take the next step as far as the in the meeting stuff, to where you can slow the game down and actually have fun.
When you first got there, what was your first impression of him?
I was like, wow, I mean, this this dude is really athletic, you know, really athletic. And, you know, you got to be careful because when they say basketball guy, you know, normally that's not a great thing. But I didn't see 1 ounce of basketball in him. You know, if they wouldn't have told me, I wouldn't have thought any different.
And why? And just because? Why? Like,
well, a lot of times when they're basketball, they think they're more passive, and you know, they're just trying to get in the way and all that stuff. And I think it's more of a stereotype than anything, because I never saw once where I'm like, okay, he's a basketball kid.
Just a couple more minutes, and I appreciate the time. As a person, how would you describe him as a person? Just off the field.
Man, he's a great person. Like, I have 3 little ones, 10, 4, and 2, and I would have no problem leaving the country for a week and have him babysit, because he's that kind of guy. He's very trustworthy. And like I said, I never had to get on him about, hey, you need to come in here and watch tape. Like, he's a professional already, and how he took care of his body, you know, because body maintenance is big. But the student of the game that he is, but I mean, he's a better person than he is football player. And I haven't had a million of those, but he would take the shirt off his back for you. Now, he's competitive, but I love that.
Yeah. I mean, that's how you get to this level too.
Right.
How does, in terms of, I mean, you coach Steve and you coach and Brandon now. Like, how do they, I don't know about compare, but
Right. Steve was, I mean, they're just completely different kind of personalities. Steve was kind of more of a quiet guy. And I mess with Steve to this day. I talked to him when he got all rookie team, but Steve's like an anime guy, so he's kind of keeps to himself a little bit. Where Brandon's, he don't want to be the life of the party, but he's also going to be heard. A little bit more of an alpha male probably. Which, like I said, they're both completely different. They're both really good football players. Now, Brandon could be lying and watch anime. I don't know. But, Steve was a big anime guy, so they're just kind of different personalities, really. Both good though.
Yeah, and I mean, and I know these guys really liked Avila last year as well. I think they would love to have gotten him. And I think they felt pretty good about getting Brandon too. Last thing, then you guys played Michigan in the national championship last year, obviously. I'm sorry, in the semifinal.
Right.
One of the guys they drafted was Mike Samuel, the slot corner. Do you remember much about him in preparing for that game? Anything stand out?
No, other than I think they like to bring him on pressures a lot.
Yes.
And they got us once. I don't know how I remember this, but they got us once on a corner cat, and they brought him. And one thing I remember is most corners will sprint for about 5 yards and kind of feel it out. He had no fear. He was like a rocket. He wasn't going to slow. And that's kind of how I teach my guys. It's feast or famine. And most of those corners don't want to get in the box there, but I remember him rifling in, and I think he made the play on the corner cat. But outside of that, that's just a little bit different world than we live. But
yeah. And then last thing with Brandon too, because it's funny because you talked about blocking the whistle and all that. You saw that. Like I was watching him last week, and you see the little shove just at the end of the whistle, which I like when linemen do that, right?
Yes.
So last thing though, is there anything else to know about him? Anything else to tell Washington fans about him?
No, just that you're getting a really good football player and a really good person, man. Sometimes those don't go hand in hand, and very competitive. He's definitely going to make the room better, and he's a good teammate, which is at our level is very important. He's going to blend in, but he's also going to be heard when he needs to be heard. But I look forward to seeing his progress. And like I said, there's hardly anything I can say bad about the kid. And that's normally I got a laundry list, just as much time as we spend with him and then being in college. But man, I would trust him. Obviously, I would with my kids. So that's a big deal to me.
Very good. AJ, I know it's been a long day recruiting. I appreciate your time, man.
No, I appreciate anything I can ever do to help. I appreciate it.
Thank you. That's it for this episode. Thanks to AJ Ricker for joining me, and thank you, as always, for tuning in. I'll be back Tuesday night / Wednesday morning with a look at the first OTA practice that we were able to watch. Talk to you next time.